Welcome to the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. Here we are still in Cleveland at the National Health Association Conference with the president of the National Health Association, somebody 74 years young. Never, ever, ever has he eaten anything other than an exclusively plant-based diet. He is goals. He has seen it all, my friends. With that, we welcome Mark Huberman to the show. Thanks for being here, Mark.
Pleasure to be here, Chuck.
And thanks for having us at the conference.
And that is also a privilege of ours. I consider your podcast the best out there. So this is the gold standard for us. And we like to do our conferences, like to set a gold standard, and you personify that.
Well, thank you. I don't know if it's the gold standard. I'm just asking questions and trying to interview some pretty interesting people.
Yeah, but you got a gift. You got a gift. I mean, there's lots of people that are, everybody's a podcaster these days, right?
True.
But
True.
You got a gift.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. And I know that you're somebody who values a good broadcaster or podcaster. We've been exchanging, sports clips. You turned me on to the Guardians announcer.
Tom Hamilton.
Man, boy, that call. It's not exactly this kind of show, but man, if we ever did a sports show, you're coming on and we're talking baseball.
And I could do some of my impressions that I do with sportscasters, of Phil Rizzuto and Howard Cosell. I'm very good at
Phil Rizzuto. Oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
This is when he used to do his radio show.
Yeah.
If you remember, there were some high hops and short stops in the weekend world of sports. This is Phil Rizzuto. That was him.
Oh, man. Okay, that is the first time in 700 and some odd episodes of the show that Phil Rizzuto's name has been mentioned. That's awesome. All right.
I think the point is, though, that...
What's that?
I guess what I think is that life is much bigger than fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
And I think that in my long arc of observation of the movement, is that those that are kind of an ism, the vegetarianism or the veganism or whatever it is, that they kind of lose perspective because life is much bigger than fruits and vegetables. There is sports, there's music, there's art, there's relationships, all of that sort of stuff. And that's really the bigger picture. And the way I've always looked at it, I always liked Joel Fuhrman's book. He's one of my closest friends. The book Eat to Live.
Yeah.
His first big bestseller and all that. Point was, if you think about the term, you eat to live, you don't live to eat.
Yeah.
That was the phrase. And I've always looked at the diet that I grew up on as just fuel for all the rest of life. I love my mangoes. I love my salad every day. I love my peas every day. But I love Broadway shows.
Yes, sir.
And I love traveling the world and meeting people of different cultures and things like that. That's the stuff of life. And food just gives me that. A healthy diet gives me that ability to do that.
I think, for me, I agree. I look at this diet as a way for me to be myself in all aspects. Mm-hmm. And I think that you were talking about the isms. I feel like a lot of people, when they get into this realm and they fall into it, and it can be a wonderful thing, but they feel like they have to put themselves in a silo and conform and be this and this and this and this and this exclusively.
Can be a religion.
Absolutely. And that's what you were talking about, losing perspective. I think that the most successful people, the people that, these people gravitate toward, whether it's, a clinician, a dietitian, a podcast host, whomever, the people who are at the top of that and are the leaders are also the people who still march to the beat of their own drum. They never lost the perspective. They understand the importance of eating a clean, healthy diet, living a healthy lifestyle, but they're still living their lifestyle.
One of my models for that is your boss, Neil Barnard.
Yeah.
Neil Barnard, again, I've met just about everybody in this health movement. I've interviewed, become friends and acquaintances, but Neil has that bigger picture. Bigger perspective. So he's not only, a vegan for animal rights and is great, the champion of animal rights and anti-vivisection and all these sort of things. He's also a musician.
Yeah.
And he also enjoys, he's got that secret, not so secret life, but it's that balanced life.
Yeah.
Where he finds joy in music and all that, animals and that. You need to have that humanity.
Sports fan too. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not
Yeah. Loves.
Yeah. Well, there you
Formula
go.
One.
There's there's me.
Yeah.
That's Mark Huberman. No wonder I like him.
he's
No wonder
a
I
good
like
guy.
you.
Yeah, he's fun to hang out
Life
with.
is more than just
Fruits and vegetables.
fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I
It
like
really
that.
is.
You've seen a lot of life, 74 years in this movement. Day one, never a piece of meat, never a piece of pizza. I mean, I would ask you what that's like, but I'm sure you would just say normal.
You know, it's interesting. So I've truthfully never met anybody like me that was born from day one on raw fruits and vegetables. And I lived that way for 32 and a half years. And there were some health issues in our family and a health crisis that I had that my parents thought. I got through the health crisis through the Sheltonian diet, so you're not going to mess with a good thing.
Yeah.
I got through it from, very early on. But to me, it really was normal. Now, there's a concept that, taste is kind of a learned behavior, I think. If you're in Italy, you learn to love wine with every meal, or you learn to eat olives or whatever it is. But for me, I grew up with a salad every day. My lunch at school when I was in grade school was a peach cut in half with some cashew butter in the middle, and trail mix before people knew what trail mix. I had cashews and raisins in a little bag, and a fresh orange juice or something. But that was normal for me. I looked forward to a salad every day, and the contrast of it is also true that when I was around, obviously, my elementary schoolmates and middle school kids, they weren't eating anything like that.
Mm-mm.
But that was okay. I didn't miss what I didn't know, and I think also that when I grew up, I've always been pretty comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
So if people said if kids could be cruel, hey, you're eating rabbit food or whatever you're doing. My father once said, you're picked on if you allow yourself to be picked on. If people thought that was going to get to me and get me down, then they'd be merciless, probably. But it didn't. And I was a happy-go-lucky kid and good family, and I loved to play ping pong and baseball and all those things. So, and I think also, my parents owned up. Where I got my first perspective on this whole movement is that my parents started a health food store in 1958. They started eating this way when I was born in 51. But they had a health food store, and my parents were pioneers in the organic movement. So before there were organic standards, before there were Whole Foods, my mother and father both would identify these legacy organic growers, the true pioneers of this business, a company that grew mangoes in Florida and apples in Virginia and they would get them shipped to their store, bushels of oranges in those days. It was bushels that they sent them by Railway Express and that. And people would come to their store. But it was the best cashews, the best mangoes, tree-ripened pineapples, tree-ripened mangoes from organic legacy growers. So we always had the best in our house. And my friends, my schoolmates, when they would come to our house, they loved our stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't deprivation or anything like that. But so what I was going to say about my arc of perspective on the movement in part drew from that, because being in the health food industry, I watched the evolution of the organic movement, but I also watched the evolution of the people that looked at food as medicine, not kind of as we look at it today. Food is more curative. So there was Adele Davis and Gaylord Hauser and all that. And they'd go through the wheat germ and apple cider vinegar where they had these secret components to it.
Yeah.
But what they were looking at, though, was that what you ate did have an impact on your health. And most of them, even if Adele Davis was a smoker, even though she was a champion of natural foods, she was still right in looking at kind of like, maybe you look at it like the founding father. In the United States, we had the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. All men are created equal.
Yep.
Well, clearly, we needed to evolve a bit beyond that. But the basic concept of we have inalienable rights in that, we have right to health. I think the concept that we have to look at how we eat, how we live, how we exercise is going to determine our health. And these early leaders, thought leaders in the health food movement, they were onto something.
Yeah.
Did science catch up and say, it wasn't the apple cider vinegar that you took with lecithin and B complex and brewer's yeast and all that, but it was just that, there was these elements of natural foods. And further identifying and exploring how you eat, how you live is going to determine your health. And that's been the evolution. So I've kind of watched it happen. And maybe what I saw in my father being a leader in the health food movement was the fads that come along.
Yeah.
I was a theater major in college.
I'm shocked.
I never figured that out. One of my favorite musicals was Gypsy. And there's a great number of the three strippers that sing the song, Everybody's Got to Have a Gimmick, right?
Right.
And it was a gimmick of blowing a horn, sexual. But in the health food movement, you see these things, health food stores are loaded with a gimmick that you want. You want this superfood or this, it was spirulina, it was this, it was something, and it never ends.
Right.
It never ends. And that's the eternal battle, maybe, of the whole food, plant-based health movements, to kind of beat those down and say, no, there are no superfoods. All this diet is a superfood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious about what drew your parents to this way of life, this way of eating in, I think you said 1951.
Actually, a little earlier than that. I have an older brother, so like 1948, my father, so the answer to that is that a quote from my late great father, that most people don't worry about their health until after they've lost it. There's some health crisis. Some people will still never change. They'll smoke. They'll get lung cancer. They'll have a lung removed, and they'll go back to smoking. But other people, and what that secret sauce is, why some people will see the light and do that. You just got to be open, maybe thoughtful, reasonable, broad-minded, all that. So my parents were in the late 1940s. They got married in 46, and my father was an athlete. He was an amateur boxer in New York. Very vigorous man, and was diagnosed with polio. Just collapsed walking my older brother on the street one day, and the idea that he would be in an iron lung or wouldn't be able to walk was just kind of not acceptable to him. My mother also had some thyroid problems, appendix problems. I have an older brother who had bronchial asthma, so the whole family was kind of a train wreck. The good fortune for them is they worked for a guy. My father was a furniture salesman when he came to Youngstown, and he worked for a guy who was an ardent vegetarian and had a slant board and all that kind of stuff. And he said to my dad, Max, he said, how about coming to hear a lecture that Dr. Shelton was giving in Cleveland, Ohio, Dr. Shelton and Dr. Benish? There might be a better way. And again, they were maybe just the good fortune. They hit him at the right moment. They were open-minded people. My father was a voracious reader. My mother was maybe skeptical of medication, whatever that combination was. They went, it just made sense. They became vegetarians overnight. My mother kept her appendix. She got her thyroid under control. My father, needless to say, other than some varicose veins that got left from his polio days, lived another 50-some years and recovered from his polio. So this all just sort of worked. So that was their vision. And then they became involved in what was the American Natural Hygiene Society. It became the National Health Association. And they thought Dr. Shelton, Dr. Benish, Dr. Esser, Stefan Esser's grandfather, one of the founders, these guys were onto something. And that really a plant-based diet, a natural hygiene diet, we called it then, the nutritarian diet, Joel Fuhrman calls it, it's just whole foods.
Yeah.
No preservatives. Water fasting when appropriate, but recognizing even that water fasting there's nothing magical about water, but it's giving the body a physiological rest. These are just kind of foundational principles of health that the NHA, ANHS has been along to, and I grew up in it. I grew up in that movement, so that's been my perspective. The only other thing I would add is about my big perspective is that my father operated a health food store. And kind of like maybe apples don't fall far from trees, my father, every organization he was in, kind of rose up and got on the board, became president, became just kind of a leadership kind of quality. So that happened with him with the health food industry. He started off what was called the National Dietary Foods Association, then became the National Nutritional Association, now the National Products Association. But that was an organization that my father got involved in that was like the distributors, manufacturers, and retailers of the health food industry. And when health foods weren't anywhere near as popular as they are today, but my father was a champion of that, became a leader. And in the 1970s, you may remember, it may be a little bit before your time, but the FDA wanted to regulate supplements, wanted you to have a prescription to get a supplement. And it was part of the medical establishment's kind of control over that. Well, my father, as a leader of the health food industry, thought this was an enormous threat to health freedom, and was the leader of the National Nutritional Food Association, sued the FDA, lobbied Congress, and in the early for 5 years, he testified before Congress, on every TV and radio show, from the Today Show to everybody, championing health freedom and the right to, and our ability to take B12 without a supplement that we all kind of think we need, and to test and supplement, take vitamin D if you want it, or to take a protein supplement if you want it. That's all because of, in large part, because of the work my father did, and his being a leader in the health food industry to give us that ability that we have to this day. That he was close friends with Linus Pauling and all these other leaders of the industry. So again, I've had kind of a front row seat to the evolution of the health food industry, which gave rise to the whole food plant-based health industry. The NHA has been kind of, I've always considered us the gold standard, kind of like the quality control of the whole movement.
Yeah.
But through that, and through my involvement with the ANHS, I knew my father's friends and all these kind of leaders. But in mine, I grew up with Joel Furman and Alan Goldhammer, Frank Sabatino. I knew Joel when he was in medical school.
Yeah.
Before he became a doctor. Same thing with Alan Goldhammer. I'm a little bit older than them, but in my role in the NHA, I had the opportunity to kind of put them on the program, let them cut their teeth and become more experienced and polished as speakers, and look where they've come. Look at the achievement that Joel Furman has had, the impact that he's had.
Yeah.
His book, New York Times bestsellers, I don't know how many times over, his public television things. But my pride is that they come out of the NHA. My personal satisfaction is that they're buddies.
Yeah.
They're friends. And that's maybe the best. When George McGovern, let's talk politics a minute. When George McGovern lost his election in 1972, he got drummed, he got pummeled by Nixon. And he gave his concession speech at like 2:00 in the morning that nobody listened to, except me, a diehard liberal, flaming liberal guy. But he said, his closing thing, he quoted Yeats. And he said, as I look back on every bone-crushing moment of the campaign, my glory was that I had such friends. And my glory in the NHA is that I get to meet Chuck Carrolls and Neil Barnards and T. Colin Campbells and all that, and that I consider them contemporaries, friends.
Absolutely.
And they validate, every time I meet one of them, they validate my life. That I grew up when my parents raised me this way, it kind of made sense to them. But it was more almost like a religion.
Yeah.
They just believed you had to do it for life.
Yeah.
But now that science has validated that, how cool is that?
It's pretty cool, man.
It's pretty cool.
Let me ask you this. Like, you have such deep roots in this movement, in this space, and yet we began this conversation talking about life is more than fruits and vegetables. Do you think that had you not grown up in that space, you would have that same perspective? Because life is, in fact, more than fruits and vegetables. You are exposed to all aspects of life. Fruits and vegetables, obviously, health, a big part of it, but you lived your whole life seeing all aspects of it. So do you think your perspective would be the same if you hadn't grown up this way?
I don't know. I guess I think that one of the other perspectives that shapes my life is that I'm a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for 40-some years, and the last 30 years I was a magistrate judge of our juvenile court and our domestic relations court. And so I dealt with life. Obviously you see the worst of life in there, but it's life also. And I think that I was also blessed to not grow up in a broken home. I had parents who were there for me every day, who loved my brother and I without qualification. If we were in theater, if we were in a show, they were eighth row center of every performance, every rehearsal. That's that's a treasure.
Yeah.
And I think so, and maybe an answer to your question about how I think I would do, my parents raised us, yes, on fruits and vegetables and nuts and dates and all that, and to love gardens and things like that. They also raised us with an appreciation of theater, raised in the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, and a sensitive appreciation for animals and respect for all life. And so I like to think that even if I was not a vegetarian, a meat eater, I'd still be a public servant.
Yeah.
Community service would be a high value because I think that's the way we're supposed to be. So again, going back to what I said in the beginning, I think this diet and lifestyle has given me the fuel to do all that. I think it's also given me, but I do think it's given me a sensitivity to life that I wouldn't have. I do believe, there's a book, one of the most formative books for me way back wasn't Eat to Live, or because that was written way after I was born. But there's a book by a guy by the name of Jeffrey Rudd called Why Kill for Food. You can probably find it on Amazon. He was secretary of the World Vegetarian Society, the British Vegetarian Society, or something like that. And he wrote a book called Why Kill for Food. And it was really quite formative for me when I was just doing this again because it's the only thing I knew.
Right.
But it really was a bigger perspective on, when we kill for food, is it necessary? But what kind of brutalizing behavior is that? The insensitivity. I know plenty of people who are hunters, right? They're good people. They're not.
Sure.
But somehow I think if they were plant-based, they would be more humane.
Right.
They would be more kinder human beings because there's an insensitivity when you can shoot a deer and not think about it.
Yeah.
And not look at that as a sentient being with feelings and all that. Something's lost. And I think that growing up in the American Natural Hygiene Society, I've always had it. I never found any joy in hooking a worm to go fish.
Right.
I thought this is odd. And not just because I wasn't interested in eating fish, but I thought, what the hell are we doing? Hooking a worm, a swirling worm, you're trying to do it. And then when you pick a fish, you hook him in his mouth. Imagine somebody fishing for you. It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
So it's a sensitivity that I got. And I think it's the lenses through which I see the world. And it's ever evolving. We were at an NHA conference with Victoria Moran, who you was here. So Victoria, I've known her for my whole career, and I've been plant-based, natural hygienist my whole life. So I've certainly never been a hunter. I've never been a fisher. I never, and I certainly oppose factory farming and all that stuff. But I was never a kind of a crusader for the vegan movement. I'm not a PETA protester or anything like that. But she did a documentary film a few years ago called A Prayer for Compassion. And I was probably 65 years old when I saw it, maybe 67. And in that movie, if you know the film was took people of different religions, Catholic priests, Buddhist monks, and how they find compassion within their faith, right? And the film had its obligatory scenes about factory farming and how cruel, almost all vegan documentaries do. But I remember, here I am like 65 years old, been living my whole life about that. And I came away from the film and it just talked to me, reached me somehow in a way, thinking, well, okay, I got this wallet in my pocket. I have this leather belt that I'm wearing. Did I think that came from just some cow just kind of reached the end of his days and they thought, well, we should do something with that stuff? I thought, that's not how it works. And what am I contributing to by doing it? So I called Victoria, actually, after watching the film, called her in New York, and they said, hey, is there a place where I can get vegan shoes and vegan clothing in New York? And I did. And that's the last time I had a vegan belt, and I wouldn't buy one today, and I wouldn't buy a car with vegan leather. I'm not on a crusade about it.
Right.
But I think it's we can become more sensitive and more aware and more humane. And so that's just a decision I made. At 65, we can still grow. We can still run. At the same time, To go back to sports,
Bring it.
another thing that happened relating to that side of me, I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan, Cleveland Indians fan for my whole career, right? And what was the Cleveland Indians logo? Chief Wahoo.
Yes, sir.
One of the most, the big nose, almost like a Jewish Shylock. That kind of thing. But anyway, so for years, there would be Indian tribes in Cleveland would be protesting to change that stigma, that stereotypical stigma thing. And around that same time, I looked in the mirror and I said, Mark Huberman, what the hell are you doing with all your Chief Wahoo paraphernalia, just like my leather jacket on? And I just said, you know what? That's it. And I took my Cleveland Indians Chief Wahoo cap and my jacket. I said, that's it. And to this day, again, I'm not on a crusade.
Yeah.
But I think it's the right thing to do. And I think we can always get a little more sensitive, a little more aware, and so kind of out of the same lenses. So I think my upbringing gave me a frame of reference that, you do have a reverence for life. You do have appreciation for the critters around you.
Yeah.
And we can always get better.
Yeah.
Can always be broader, more sensitive, more aware. So I like to think I'm still growing a little bit.
I would say so. If you're making changes like that at that age, I would say like a lot of people, once they hit 40, even they feel kind of curmudgeon-y, stuck in their ways, but you're always evolving. And I know that the health movement is one big constant evolution. What are some of the biggest, most profound changes you have seen in your years living in this realm that maybe even you never thought that we would see?
So I think the spokespeople, the champions of the movement are so much more articulate, charismatic, dynamic. The people that grew up that I grew up with, the leaders of the American Natural Hygiene Society back in the way, these were almost like fire and brimstone guys. And in truth, they had their empirical observations when Dr. Esser's grandfather ran his health ranch in Texas. People got well because it works. The body does work. And water fasting does give the physiological rest, and people can recover. But he didn't have the science behind him. And to a lot of people, they want credibility. They want science. They want to prove it to me. I'm from Missouri. Show me that this isn't just something. So I think a lot of the people were, Dr. Shelton used to say, give me 5 good hygienists. And he didn't care about reforming the world. He didn't care. The rest of that's their tough luck. That's what I want because I'm not compromising. But today, the credibility, the persuasiveness of Joel Furman and Alan and the people that we're able to bring to the NHA conferences. You watch Robin Chutkin last night. She's radiant, but she's also brilliant and articulate and all that. And they just reach people on a different level, and they're less intimidating. Your guy, Neil Barnard, and I hate to say he's a nouveau guy because Neil's been around like 30, 40 years. He's just kind of ageless.
Right.
But his approach to conveying the message is a non-intimidating one. It's a non-threatening one. It's academically, very well supported and all that. And he does it in, again, a non-threatening way. I think, and it maybe goes back to a little bit of the Huberman philosophy that I've never been a proselytizer. I have very strong opinions about my diet, right? But if we started this interview and if you didn't ask me, how I grew up or what I think are fruits and vegetables, I wouldn't say anything about it. Because I'm not a proselyte. I don't think that's how you do anything. I don't think politically, religiously, or anything. I'm very involved in my synagogue and community. I'm president of our Jewish Federation and that, but I don't proselytize. I think you do it by example. And I've done that by example my whole life.
It's so funny because there's that joke, how do you know if somebody's vegan? They'll tell you.
They'll tell you. That's exactly right. That's well said.
Yeah.
It's really true.
Yeah.
And I remember, people could be quite rude about it in growing up about it. If you weren't doing this way, what's wrong with you? And that's never been the way. And even in my marriage to Wanda, we've been married 34 years. The first 20 years of that marriage, she was mostly vegan. I think she would say kind of a junk food vegan and all that. Have some salmon once in a while, have some, those, and organic wine. I would buy the organic wine, sulfite free and all that. But I would never, and I think she would say that one of the secrets of our marriage is that I never judged. I mean, it's not my place to tell her what religion she should be or how she should think. I loved her because of her, not because she ate the same thing that I did.
Yeah.
But when she decided to on her own, on her time, I died and went to heaven.
Yeah.
Because to be able to share that is really a blessing for me. I know from, again, that long, as a long observer of this movement, one of the toughest things that I see is that where a husband will follow this lifestyle, but the wife won't.
Yeah.
The boyfriend will, the girlfriend won't. The parents will, but they can't get their kids to do it. It's really, can be really challenging. I know Chef AJ and JP, John Pierre, speak about that a lot.
Yeah.
About that, how tough it can be. When Wanda joined me on this verge, on this journey after completely joined me in 2011, something like that, that was great. But I think one of the lessons in life, or one of the Huberman philosophies, is that you shouldn't proselytize. It's not the way you convince people. You do it by example.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've always tried to do my whole life. People ask me what I think, I'll talk to them all day long.
Yeah.
If they don't, I'll talk to them about the latest Supreme Court decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or civil rights, or the latest production on Broadway. Or sportscasters.
Gotta be
great
sports.
sportscasters.
Bring
That's
on the
what I'll
sports.
do. But that's like that goes back to that original point. We eat to live. We don't live to eat.
Right. It's more than fruits and vegetables.
Way more.
And, it's funny, like my wife is kind of the same way. She eats healthy. It's not 100% plant-based by any stretch of the imagination. And, her father lives with us now. He's 90, and he is very much stuck in his ways when it comes to not healthy eating, but eating what he wants to eat. And people are shocked when they ask you, oh, what do you have in your pantry? I'm like, well, Hostess donuts, ring dings, potato chips, it's like all these things. They're like, how do you deal with that? I was like, well, I don't judge them. They don't judge me.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their food, I've got mine, and it works. Because if you get in this judgy type of relationship, one, you're going to doom the relationship. And two, you're really going to turn the person off to the idea of maybe eating healthier down the line. And the last thing you want is to get on that pedestal where holier than thou, my way or the highway, you're
Exactly.
wrong.
I believe also that you plant seeds with people.
For sure.
Particularly with diet. You plant seeds. And that, hopefully one day, even with my kids, you just think, that when you get sick, it's easy to take an antibiotic, or it's easy to just, go to bed and rest, maybe fast for a day or two, stay on distilled water and that kind of stuff. So you plant those seeds and you hope that they take root. If they don't, they're still your kids. You love your kids. I mean,
Absolutely.
The fact that a child has gastric bypass surgery, that's not a crime. Everybody has the right to journey through life in their own way and in their own time. But I think one of the unfortunate things that I've seen over the years is that people don't respect that enough. And it's hard. My late mother used to say that some of the toughest people to convince are those closest to you, and it hurts the most because they don't have to go through that. My mom had a sister who was identified with breast cancer, a lump, and said, well, go to see Dr. Sabatino, go to see Dr. Scott, at least get a second opinion. But some people won't. That's okay. But it hurts when you do it. And with your kids, it kills you.
Yeah.
But you got to have the bigger perspective on life, that there is more to life than fruits and vegetables. I have wonderful daughters. They're wonderful. I have 3, so they're wonderful kids. The fact that they are anywhere near as diligent as I am in diet, that's just fine.
Love them.
They have the right to it.
Yeah.
They have the right to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the big picture.
So
That's the big picture. The other thing, you had asked me about what has changed.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I want to share is that something that I never would have dreamed of in my lifetime, is what the NHA has brought, is plant-based travel. There is vegan travel. There's been around a while. But a few years ago, my wife, Wanda, and a lady by the name of Lisa McCarl, who's at the conference, is a life member and a travel agent extraordinaire, had the concept of doing plant-based travel where we would deal with small ships or land tours, but we would take care of all your meals. And not just take care of your meals that they're vegan, but for people in our health movement that go through True North and go through Joel Furman followers. They want to be the gold standard. They want to be SOS free.
Yes, sir.
The idea so we've developed this thing. We've partnered with Windstar Cruise Lines, and now we're doing with Alma Waterways. Be able to go to these destinations and work with their chefs so that when you go on, it's almost like a mini NHA conference. That you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner buffets with desserts and breads and all that, SOS free.
Yeah.
And I've traveled the world. I mean, that's because I'm bigger than fruits and vegetables.
Yes, sir.
I've been all over the world, and Wanda and I, but it's challenging. When you want to live this lifestyle, to translate in different languages, groceries, let alone try to figure out, you're in Italy, you say, can you give me something without oil, without olive oil?
Good luck.
You're out of your mind. We're in Greece without olives, something without olives. It's really hard. So we've done that, and it has exploded in popularity. And every cruise that we open sells out almost immediately. You get a member, if you're a life member of the NHA, you get first booking and things like that. Century Club, so it's been a kind of an advantage of membership. But I never would have thought in my lifetime, valuing this lifestyle as I do, as the key to my own longevity, that I could travel the world and not even have to think about food. Mm. And when we were just in French Polynesia, we had the whole ship, 266 people. And Dr. Furman and his wife actually joined us on that one. Not for a lecture, not for education, not for CLE, not for a tax write-off, just to enjoy. And you had 266 like-minded people enjoying the wonders of the world and be able to have the diet that we so value. Is like, you pinch yourself and say, how could this be? But it's a reality. And I think I'm just one of the luckiest guys in the world to be able to do that, to go there. We're going to Antarctica. Can you imagine? We went to Iceland last year. Can you imagine being in Iceland where they grow nothing except some cherry tomatoes in a greenhouse? It's fish.
Yeah.
But we were able to, with Cruise Line, they brought stuff in and we ate just like we ate here at the conference with avocados and guacamole and baked potatoes and yams and soups and desserts.
Yeah, man.
I never would have thought of my parents. My mother died in her sleep at 97. My father at 86. They wouldn't believe it. Yeah. They wouldn't believe it that this would be possible to do that. And we've had now, I think, I just was counting, I think we've had 700 people have traveled with the NHA over the last 3 years. And we've got more coming up. But again, just the point that I often like to say, Chuck, that when you live this lifestyle, you don't get invited over for dinner a lot, nor do you invite a lot of people over for dinner a lot. The idea to come to an NHA conference like we do, like you're seeing here, with 300 like-minded people all enjoying and not having to worry about, not having to run out to Whole Foods with a cooler.
Yep, I know that game.
And to travel the world. Okay, this is stateside here.
Yeah.
To go, like we're going to South Africa, Antarctica in January. Can you imagine even thinking about the logistics if you just wanted to take a vacation in Antarctica, some private tour, how you would do this lifestyle?
You're doing a trip to South Africa?
South Africa, land tour with World Vegan Travel.
I am going to introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Roxy Becker, who immigrated not more than a couple years ago from South Africa. Mm-hmm. She is somebody you would love to talk to if you need any tips. I know you're a well-traveled man, but she is a native South African. Yeah. Just wonderful.
We're always looking for new destinations.
Fresh face, young, like barely 30. I don't even know if she's 30 yet, but she's an up-and-comer in this movie.
I would say, I guess one other thing I was thinking about the big picture of things is that one thing that is better, way better than when I grew up, in the 1950s, there were no salad bars anywhere. There were no, when you went into a grocery store, as I remember our neighborhood grocery stores, the produce cooler was in the back.
Yeah.
Right, with all the junk, that was a small thing. Today, one of the good things is that when you walk into Whole Foods or Kroger's or Heinen's or Wegmans or that, what is the first thing you really hit? These massive produce departments.
Yes, sir.
That's progress.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a wonderful thing. It wasn't like that back then. And sure, would we all want it to all be organic, but there's more than that than there ever was. Would we want, less some of the processed junk stuff and all that? But there still is more availability of this stuff than there ever was. And again, I look back on it and think, God almighty, this is unbelievable.
Yeah,
That is progress and progress towards our movement. And that's something from which I have a lot of optimism in the future. The incredible thought leaders that we got now. Podcasts like this, the reach that you have. I mean, you have viewers from all over the world that listen to you. Who would have thought when the American Natural Hygiene Society were holding our first conference in 1949, people had to gather around the country in New York City. You know, if you were interested in that, 200-300 people would come. And that was it. There was no internet.
Yeah.
So the possibilities are extraordinary now. So that's where my optimism comes from when I look out and we have a packed house out there. We have 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's a beautiful thing.
And look at the dynamics. Look at the demographics of the speakers. Cyrus Gambetta.
Yep.
The Stancics. Chilla Varesh. This isn't T. Colin Campbell and Caldwell Esselstyn. And they're legends and they're tremendous. But this is the future. So the future is pretty bright to me.
I like that.
I'm just glad I still got a hand in it.
Oh, you absolutely. You're still a mover and a shaker. You're at the top. You're helping to shape that future, my friend.
My glory is I got such friends.
Yes, sir. I can't think of a better way to end it. Great quote. Mark Huberman, thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.